Shabbat Shalom. This week we begin a new book of the Torah, Sefer Vayikra, the book of Leviticus. And I imagine that you feel very much like I do, that this comes not a moment too soon. After weeks of reading detail after detail after detail after detail about the building of the Mishkan, the wilderness tabernacle that was the sacred center of the camp of ancient Israel, and the model for the Beit HaMikdash, the temple in Jerusalem, now we are ready to move into the Ohel Moed, into the tabernacle itself, and engage in a relationship of holiness, a bond between Israel and God. One of the curious things about Vayikra is the very first word, Vav Yud Kuf Resh Aleph, and in every Sefer Torah, that Aleph is written smaller than all the other letters. Lots of explanations have been given over the years for why that Aleph is smaller. But my personal favorite comes from the Kotzker Rebbe, Menachem Mendel of Kotzk, one of the great Hasidic masters. The Kotzker said that what that small Aleph is telling us is that God continued his process of tzimtzum, God's withdrawal into God's self, God making God's self smaller in order to engage us in relationship. Now that the Mishkan is built, God speaks to Moshe from the Ohel Moed. When Solomon built the temple, Solomon said, "What building can possibly contain God? God who is infinite, transcendent, greater than the universe. Is a building going to capture God?" But according to the Kotzker, this is the source of God's love, that God withdrew into God's self, that God made God's self smaller in order for a puny human being to engage in relationship. And while the Ohel Moed had an oracular function in order to tell us the mind of God, in order to reveal to us God's will, none of that could have happened. There would have been no speech, there would have been no communication, no commands, no relationship, if God had not been willing to make God's self smaller. And that, for the Kotzker, is the model of spirituality. To be spiritual doesn't mean to be full of oneself. It means to be empty of oneself. And only when we make ourselves smaller are we large enough to have a relationship and loyalty, honesty, fidelity, and intimacy. And that, I think, is the most important lesson of Vayikra. Shabbat Shalom. May you have a Zis and Shabbos.